Hi everyone, this is Margaret Manning with 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. My guest today is Donnie Davis. Donnie is the founder of the Gaga Sisterhood, which is a social network for grandmothers. And she's the author of a book called When Being a Grandma Isn't Always Grand. It's a great title. Welcome, Donnie.
Thank you, Margaret. It's fun to be here and talk about my favorite subject.
Yes, well,
you're a grandma.
Yeah, isn't it great? Well, look, I'm really glad that you're here, and I do have a question for you because we have 50,000 women in our community, and we talk about grandparenting a lot, and I think a lot of women, it fulfills a very beautiful part of their life, like you described in your community, but a lot of women don't have access to their grandchildren. And, there's obviously some tangled stories behind some of them. Other times it's just circumstance. So could you tell me the kinds of conversations that come up in your community, your Gaga sisterhood, and just how you deal with them, how you talk about them?
Well, first of all, this is a really sad topic.
Yes.
And I think it's one that grandmas are not so open to talking about because it's painful. But I do know of grandmas who have some rather fragile relationships with their adult children. And when that happens, it's so often because conflict has risen over they're not understanding each other.
Yes.
Or there could be a divorce and the parents no longer want the former grandparents in the picture. And then there's some misunderstandings that just get misinterpreted. I know one grandma who's not allowed to see her grandchildren unless it's supervised. And the parents are there or somebody is there. The grandparents cannot take the grandchildren alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so sad when that happens. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, there are just personality conflicts where people just don't get along. They don't see eye to eye, and there's no way to resolve it. And it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I guess I guess the question is, what do you do in that situation? What are some of the solutions? I mean, for example, if it doesn't always have to be because of a dramatic, personality situation. It could be because you live in a different country. You just don't have access to your grandchild because you don't have a lot of money, perhaps, and you can't get on a plane and go to Australia. So you may, there may be no problem. It may just be that don't have access. So do you have any thoughts about how you can connect, even if there is a bit of, difficulty there?
Well, I think you have to start working on the relationship with the parents and find some kind of mutual understanding. And I think what you've described, where long distance is a factor, is not the same as one where the relationship is not working.
That's true.
With a long distance, you could try to Skype, or you could write letters, or you could send things to the grandchildren. That's more easily resolved. Mm-hmm. But one where the parents are saying, we don't want you in our lives, or we forbid you to see the grandchildren, those are more complex. And there are some organizations for grandparent rights where you can find out what are your rights. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to be very cautious about not stepping up the legal aspects before you've had a conversation with the parents. But if all else fails, you can find out what are your rights.
Because grandparents do have rights in the United States. I don't know, different countries obviously differ, but I think the first thing for me, I think, is to understand the root of the problem, like why you're not communicating. Is it something very straightforward that, for example, a religious difference or a values difference? Is it something that you just have a difference of opinion? Have you ever had women talk about the actual grandchild being the catalyst for finding a common ground? Like you say to this person, we have a different opinion about this and this, but your daughter or your son is important to me, and can we just put everything aside? I guess that's maybe being too rational, but what are some of the conversations you've had?
Well, that your word rational is key here, because
Yeah.
a lot of times they become irrational.
Yeah.
The anger builds, the
Yeah.
resentment builds, and then there's no longer an option to communicate. But if you're still communicating, if you can look at that grandchild and say to the parents, we're a team. I want to be part of the team.
Yes.
You tell me what I can do to be part of the team. And you kind of have to be humble and swallow your pride and let go of your ego and say, help me to be on the team raising and helping this grandchild
Yes.
so that this child can be a good human being with values. And if our values are a little different, I can put mine aside if that
Yes.
will keep our relationship more open.
Yeah. I think you've actually touched on something. That's a very practical thing. And I mean, assuming that you can have that conversation, I think that's a
Yes.
really great place to start, to just think about it as the child is ultimately the most important thing here, not whether you have a disagreement on anything, any particular thing, unless there's some, danger that, you might be in. There's no harm in having that conversation and trying at least and checking out what the local, support might be. And I imagine that people like your sisterhood is a good place to come and talk about it, even if you have, an outlet for your sadness and disappointment.
That's why I came up with the idea for the book, which I wrote in 2012, When
Yes.
Being a Grandma Isn't So Grand. Now, the subtitle of that is 4 Keys to Love Your Grandchild's Parents.
And what are those
Because
4 keys?
the love is an acronym. So L stands for Learn the Parents' Rules and Parenting Styles. The O stands for Own Your Shared Purpose, which is what I just talked about. We're part of a team. The V stands for Value the parents' hard work, because parents work so hard.
Totally.
And then E, I think, is the most important. Empathize, empathize, empathize. Parents do not want advice. They want empathy. They want you to listen. So when they come to you and they say, oh, I'm so tired, and you know that it's because they've taken on so much, you wouldn't say, well, of course you're tired. Look at all you're doing. You would say, oh, that's so hard. Gosh, is there anything I can do to help? Or
Yes.
I see how tiring it must be. Empathy.
Yeah. And if those are great, 4 great, tips, I think. And if you can keep it at a level of, genuine caring, and you may never build a deep and meaningful relationship with your daughter-in-law or your son-in-law, but at least you at one level have reached calm and a place where you're, sharing.
Yeah. Another thing is, it makes a difference whether you're the maternal or the paternal grandparent. Sometimes the maternal grandma can have more privileges than the paternal grandmother. And as I said, when I started thinking about this book, we were getting together and talking about not only the joys of being a grandma, but the challenges.
Yes.
And a lot of times they don't appreciate me. They don't understand that I feel left out. So we've had these conversations, which led to my book, When Being a Grandma Isn't So Grand.
And it's actually really interesting. I mean, I think that we've talked in another video about the modern grandmother. And I think that, we're all kind of not trapped. We're all evolving into this new world where parenting is tough these days. I mean, the mother may be working, dealing with childcare. In the past, it might have been, kind of socially, not accepted, but it was socially done for the grandmother to look after the children. But now, there's a different ethos for everybody, for the child, the grandparent, and the parent. So, assuming that there's at least an open communication, you can just elevate the child to be the most important thing, and be part of the team.
And I do think actually that grandparents today are providing more childcare for their grandchildren.
I don't know what the statistics on that are, because it seems like a lot of grandparents are working too these days. So you're probably possibly right. Are a lot of the women in your community, do you think most of them well, most of them, are many of them taking care of grandchildren?
Many are, yes. They're providing regular childcare. One of our members is a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
She changed her practice to seeing her clients at night so that she could be with her grandchildren during the day.
Yeah.
She said, they're only young for a certain amount of time, and I want to be with them and form a bond with them.
Yeah.
And so that's what she did.
This is the passion of being a grandmother, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. This has been a really great conversation. Is there anything that we've missed here? I mean, I know this is a delicate subject, and I know we will get some comments, and I encourage people to leave comments in the section below the article, because I think that, as long as we're, civil and respectful and try to keep things in perspective, what other advice might you give?
I think sometimes if you can find a mediator or some neutral person, a therapist, a counselor, who can help you communicate together between the generations, the grandparents and the parents, to see if there might be a common ground that they can find so that they're not losing out. Because when the grandparents are deprived, the grandchildren are deprived.
Yes.
They're missing out on that richness that the grandparents can give to grandchildren. Right. It's totally different than the parents. Right. It's more spacious. It's more relaxed. It's more, I want to say loving, but there's a different quality about it.
Yes.
That grandparents give.
Well, it is. I think there's a certain element of unconditional love that a grandparent gives that a parent can't help but be a little conditional. Like, if you do your homework, then you can do this. Yeah. Whereas, grandmothers, tend to be, I don't know, just adoring of just the effort and, the child themselves. So
that's a perfect word, unconditional. Yeah. Absolutely. We use that a lot.
I wish you luck with your community, and I'm encouraging all the women that are watching this to go to thegagasisterhood.com, sign up for your newsletter. You send out, is it a weekly or monthly?
A monthly newsletter that summarizes our meetings with our live speakers.
Fantastic. Do you record those?
We haven't recorded them, but I may be doing some podcasts next year.
Yeah, that could be, because then you could share the experience of the meeting, because I'm sure questions come up in those meetings that, face-to-face meetings that could be useful.
And we have an online members forum. So if you join as a remote member, you can participate in conversations with other grandmothers.
Okay. So if you're a grandmother or a grandmother at heart, check out the Donnie's website, and I wish you all the best with it. It's a fantastic idea.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Donnie.